Hello and welcome, lads and lasses, to a mech tech lore video. On today's topic, we will be discussing Lost Tech equipment. Now, Lost Tech is essentially the technology that was created during the Star League era, the most advanced nation-state to have ever dwelled within the sphere, uniting the scattered dynastic kingdoms in space to form their own interstellar empire. Before collapsing from internal strife, the technological advancements that were made in this era would be lost in the major succession wars to follow their collapse after the American Civil War. And with the exodus of the SLDF from the sphere under the stewardship of Alexander Kerensky, protector of the realm, many of these technologies would remain lost, only to be rediscovered hundreds of years later in the dawn of the 31st century, with the uncovery of the Helm Memory Core. Now for today's lore video, we will be going over a series of Lost Tech equipment. To begin with, we will discuss the AMS, or Anti-Missile System. The AMS is designed to function as a mech's close-point defense against missile or rocket-based munitions. Now, that sounds pretty handy, but on the flip side, it has a relatively short range. Pilots who had outfitted their battle mechs with it in the Star League era also often reported the ammo bins drying up too quickly in engagements. This led to the pilots choosing when to activate their AMS, turning it off if the enemy missile spread could be lessened by cover to preserve as much of their precious DACA as possible. Now, when using the AMS, it is important to know that the relatively low ammunition capacity greatly reduces its use in long-term engagements. So, when activating your AMS, you want to take into consideration when it is crucial and when it is not. For example, if you can easily duck behind cover of a building, a canyon cliff face, or perhaps a friend, use as a human shield. Trust me, they'll absorb rockets just as well as a building. Presumably your friend is, of course, larger than you. Unless your friend is a cute Irby-chan, then of course they'll still absorb a quarter of the damage, and hey, a quarter is a quarter. You should definitely do so to preserve as much munitions as possible. Also, while your AMS is active, you are not invincible. While the AMS blasts missiles out of the sky, it cannot stop them all. Mechs, even outfitted with the AMS components, will find that if they are targeted by multiple LRMs, long-range missiles, or SRMs, short-range missiles, equipped enemies, that their defense system will be near null and void. Let's put this into perspective, shall we? So let us say that you are in your Highlander, and you think that just because you have all that nice thick armor, in addition to a shoulder-mounted AMS turret to obliterate those pesky rocket-propelled sadness packages from the sky, that you'd be safe from any significant amount of damage. That's where you're wrong, kiddo. The AMS can reduce a volley of missile fire for a time. However, if faced with, let's say, catapult or multiple LRM and SRM combatants, you'll find the incoming simultaneous missile barrages to be the equivalent of trying to use a tennis racket to bat away at a Flammenwerfer. You'll find that you'll be quite werft in Flammen. The AMS is not an all-in-one answer to missiles. Rather, it is a tool to reduce incoming damage when possible, not outright prevent it. Think carefully of when best to use it, warrior. Also, if you're wondering, no, it cannot be used offensively against anything but missiles in-game. Though it would be awesome if this bad boy could blast power armor out of the sky. Though the AMS can be equipped on any vehicle, so it has a wide range of applications from battle mech to battle tank, etc., etc. Now, for game rules, please note that anytime I begin to talk about the rule sets, I'm going to directly quote the readouts as listed. This is to prevent any confusion that may occur when I do these lore videos. Reference is in the description. The link listed here will direct you to where you may purchase a digital PDF version of the readout. Game use. Whenever a mech equipped with an anti-missile system is attacked by a flight of missiles, the player can choose to engage the system prior to the to-hit roll. The defending player simply rolls a 1d6 to determine how many missiles the system has destroyed. The player rolls another 1d6 and multiplies the results by 2 to determine how much anti-missile ammunition was spent shooting down the attacking missiles. Note that it is possible for the second die roll to result in more ammunition being expended than was available. In such a case, the results of the missiles destroyed roll still apply. The missiles then make their attack as normal. If any remain, but the player uses the column appropriate to their reduced number on the missile hit table. If the number of missiles falls between two columns, use the column closest to the number rounding down. For example, an LRM-10 flight that was reduced to 9 missiles would still use the 10 column, but if that flight was reduced to 8 missiles, it would use the 6 column. A flight reduced to 1 missile uses the second column. A flight cannot hit with more missiles than it has after the attack. Regardless of the result on the missile hit table, the anti-missile system can only be used against missiles. The anti-missile system table is 0.5 tonnage, 1 critical space, and 12 shots per ton. All in all, you'll find the AMS to be a very interesting component for certain situations. It is only useful if your enemy brings a substantial amount of missile-based weapons. It should activate only when needed to preserve its rather limited ammunition draw. If you can afford the extra tonnage on your battle mech or vehicles, you'll find that the AMS can keep your vehicles combat operational, but only for a while longer. Under heavy barrages, the AMS becomes quite useless as it's not capable of keeping up with the sheer quantity of missiles. The next piece of Lost Tech equipment we'll be discussing is the Arrow 4 missile system. For those of you violently shaking in your chair, calm down. It's one of those weapons that just sends shivers down your spine, I know. The Arrow 4 missile. Well, it's basically the Long Tom of the Battletech universe. It's a long-range surface-to-surface missile. She's meant to step in for standard artillery. Now, one of the added benefits of choosing to install the Arrow 4 missile system is that it's relatively lightweight compared to conventional artillery. One of the drawbacks has got to be the cost of munitions, as these missiles sure as hell ain't cheap. Now, there are two options of missiles you can use. There's the cheaper standard area saturation missile. The standard missile has a 45-meter blast radius and does general explosive damage to any unlucky SOB to be caught in the blast radius. The second and more expensive option is the Homing Arrow 4. It requires the use of the tag to be guided to its target in tandem with the missile's internal computer targeting system. This missile allows for more precise strikes as to minimize collateral damage, for those of you warriors who still yet have honor. She's worth her weight in C-bills all right, so long as you can guarantee the shot, or drop one of those standard ones right on a mechanized infantry column. That'll do a lot of damage. Now for the game rules. Game use. Arrow 4 missile artillery is treated just like any other artillery piece using all the off-board artillery rules found on pages 41 through 2 of the Battletech manual. One quick insert here. This book is old, so you might actually find it in some of the newer, more condensed versions of the rulebook, such as I think the Alpha Command Strike should be out relatively soon, or maybe one of the Total Warfare books. Continuing. Unless otherwise noted below. If a standard area saturation missile is fired, the location of the target hex and the turn of arrival should be noted on paper. The area saturation missiles do 20 points of damage to all units in the impact hex, and 10 points to all units in the surrounding hexes. Homing missiles do not need to have a target hex plotted when fired, but the attacker must note which tag, which stands for Target Acquisition Gear, equipped unit he will use for designating during the turn of arrival. During the offboard artillery portion of the phase, on the turn of arrival, the attacking player must designate a target with the unit previously noted. If the unit does not designate a target, the missile will impact harmlessly into the ground. To designate a target, a tag-equipped unit must have a valid line of sight, or LOS, which you'll see in the rulebooks, to the target and be within 15 hexes. The base to hit number is found on the table below. All normal combat modifiers for attacks apply, including attacker's movement, target movement, partial cover, gunnery skill, and so on. If the target is designated, the missile strikes the target on a 2d6 roll of 4 or more. It will do 20 points of damage to the target and 5 points of normal artillery damage to any other unit in the hex. The damage location discovered as though the designating unit were firing at the target. Therefore, if the designating unit is in the left side of the arc of the target, Use the left side of the column of the hit location table to find out what portion of the mech was hit. If the attack misses, it does only 5 points of artillery damage to the target and to any other unit in the hex. Arrow 4 missile system table, heat 10, damage 20, minimum artillery, maximum range of 5, tonnage 15, critical 15, ammo 5. Heat is 0 below, but that's the homing. Damage not available, so you again, you'll have to reference that in another thing. It's short 1 to 5, tag is 6 to 9, long is 10 to 15, and tonnage is 1, critical is 1, and ammo is not available in this little piece of paper. Makes me sad, but that's what you're gonna have to use another book. This is one thing I need to insert and just stop this real quick here. It annoys me. It annoys me that you have to reference multiple books. There's unfortunately no other way to do it if you have the arrow missile system, unless it's in one of the more newer, condensed rule books. So, yeah. It's one of those things where special weapons or rules like this, my suggestion to you is create a note, put it somewhere, and be like, okay, this is how this weapon works, and so you can reference it later. Or just, stick a sticky note in there with the pertinent information written on there. Anyways, moving on. All in all, the Arrow 4 missile system, if used correctly, can utterly demolish targets or groups of targets with well-placed shots. Again, if you're role-playing this weapon, you'll want to be very, very careful with it, as you might kill or damage something you might not necessarily would like to. Moving on to the next weapon, and I know what you guys are thinking. You guys are like, oh, you're gonna say those weapons? Where's those weapons? Yes, they're coming. They're right here, guys. The clanner weapons. Okay, you can stop howling at the moon, you freaking savages. So, now we're gonna be talking about the extended range laser and the PPC. Now, one thing before you guys screech at me too loudly, we will talk about them again when we move on to the clanner lore. But for now, I'm gonna be kind of general with them because they're going to disappear, and for the most part of the period of time we're covering right now, they don't really exist anymore, except this book is 2750, so it's like they do exist, just not for very long. So, now let's dive right in, shall we? The ER Large Laser. It's a laser that is large and has quite the range, much like its name. Pretty much self-explanatory as to how it works. ER standing for, I'm sure you've guessed it by now, extended range. The ER large laser table for firing is as follows. 12 points of heat, 8 points of damage, weighing in at 5 tons and a critical of 2. As one would expect, she has 0 ammunition as it's an energy weapon. She'll be drinking your fusion core, and with that heat buildup, you'll find yourself getting toasty real quick. Her ranges are 1 to 7 hexes for short, 8 to 14 hexes for medium, and 15 to 19 hexes for long ranges. This one is one of my personal favorite lasers, as its bright lance will be able to burn targets at longer distances than your standard laser weaponry. She's a close number 2 to the pulse laser for me, but in-game usage, you'll find that this laser is great for melting armor at long distances. Take advantage of your ranges. It allows for some good kiting. However, on the flip side, watch that heat buildup. She burns hot, and you'll find your mechs glowing bright molten red real quick. In video game adaptations, you'll find the translation to be quite accurate to the tabletop as to functionality. If you can avoid it, don't bring this weapon to hot planets. It will hamstring a mech with insufficient heat sinks or coolant fluid, which on that note, be sure to bring as much coolant fluid as possible. And on lava worlds, remember, putting heat sinks on your feet, it's not going to work out particularly well, let's just say that much. Next up, we have the ER-PPC. That stands for Extended Range Particle Projector Cannon. Again, they do roughly the equivalent amount of damage as their predecessor variants. However, they are going to be racking up quite the heat. So let's get the rundown of the ER-PPC table. She's a smoking babe, all right. 15 points of heat. Oh, mama damn, that's a hot one. That's only 3 more points than the ER Large Laser. But you'll find that it stacks up extremely fast, so be very cautious. Again, watch your heat management. It is essential for these sorts of weapons. She punches into the enemy mechs, blowing scalding molten divots, utterly blasting her way through armor with a whopping 10 points of damage. Oh man, I love energy weapons sometimes. While you don't have to worry about the internal explosions from your ammo racks detonating or keeping tabs on ammo, you should be very conscious of heat management. Your internals will fry, and you will find that the heat pressure will act as sort of internal detonations of their own. Not to mention, your superstructure has weak knees for heat, and while racking that up will bring damage across the board, that can actually pop your fusion core, which will kill you. Heat can make your mech's limbs blow clear off to let all that heat energy displace. Also, this might be a good time to mention that your warriors are riding just above a fusion reactor, so unless you want your mech tech scraping charred mech warriors out of the cockpit for a week, watch those heat levels. The next weapon we have is a classic, the Goss Rifle. This one's one of my favorites for sure. The Goss Rifle is powered by a series of magnets. This is quite nice, as your ammunition is solid caseless slugs, meaning they have no need for explosive propellant, which sort of translates to your ammo racks can't detonate. At least not with the Goss rounds anyways. Now, for the Goss Rifle's table, this monster cannon racks up 1 point of heat, 15 points of damage. That is awesome. This puppy will punch right through cockpits, utterly shredding interior systems, causing all sorts of mayhem with the enemy's cockpit, but I digress too much here. Her ranges are as follows. She has a minimum of 2 hexes, a short range of 1 to 7 hexes, 8 to 15 hexes for medium, 16 to 22, for long, and weighing in about 15 tons. She has a critical of 7 and an ammo setting of 10. So yes, not very much ammo in that department. In game, she plays like a rifle, much like the name. High-powered one at that. However, you're gonna want a stable firing position to make every shot count. Those slugs are massive. There is a reason why internal cockpit systems are rarer by the decade in the Battletech universe. You can blame these suckers right here. It is also said that these master cannons have slain many a space whale. Next up, we have ourselves the Kw1 Ultra Autocannon 5, masterfully designed by Kawabata Weapons Incorporated. This one actually has some special rules, so we're going to have to reference the book for this one. So, to begin, game use. Whenever the player fires the AC-5 Ultra, he can choose to fire at normal or double rates of fire. If he selects normal rate of fire, all normal combat rules apply. If he chooses double rate of fire, use the rules given below. An AC-5 Ultra firing at double rate generates twice as many heat points and uses 2 shots of ammunition instead of 1. The standard to hit roll is made. If the roll is successful, the player must roll in the 2 column of the missile hit table to determine how many shots hit. For each hit on the target, roll to discover the hit location. Each shot that hits does 5 points of damage. Additionally, whenever the weapon fires in its double fire mode, and the result of the to hit roll is a 2, the arming circuitry fails and the weapon is useless until repaired by a tech. To make this repair, roll a 2d6 on a result of 3 or more, the weapon is completely repaired in a required time of 15 minutes per repair rules on table on page 92 of the Mech Warrior book, which, by the way, that book it's referencing is ancient. So, not sure where that one is. Honestly, quick little digression here before we delve into the tables. What they really need to do is reprint almost everything into a more condensed format, because a lot of times when these older books that we're going to be going through and I reference other books, it's like they actually kind of rolled them into other things, and it's like, god damn it. Like, I don't even know where they are because there's so many books and pages, and honestly, I'm not that good with numbers and remembering mathematics. So, So, now let's delve into the Autocannon 5 Ultra table. For its heat, she does 1 point of heat, as discussed before, 5 points of damage, a minimum range of 2 hexes, short range of 1 to 6 hexes, medium 7 to 13 hexes, 14 to 20 for long, and a tonnage of 9. Critical 5 points, and an ammunition capacity of 20. The AC-5 is gonna be better at longer ranges. If the enemy closes the gap, switch to your medium to close range weapon groupings as to conserve ammunition. The AC-5 KW is something I've never actually used, but based on its stats and its readings, that's how I would use it. I wouldn't want to use that in too much close proximity, though, if desperate times, desperate measures, you know what they say. Let 'em have it. Alpha strike away. What's this, brothers? Another glorious weapon, you say? Ah, yes, the LB-10X Autocannon. It's an AC-10, all right, but get this, it's made with lighter materials, which also allows for better heat displacement, and to top that off, will require fewer heat sinks in your loadout. Thanks to that, she's a bit on the pricier side, though, so you're gonna have to crack open that wallet. Because honestly, but it's honestly a pretty good upgrade, all things considered. So it's worth its weight in dollars, and you'll see in just a second. She's capable of firing standard anti-rounds, just like your standard AC-10. But let me ask you, have you ever wanted a mech shotgun? I'm going to assume a yes on that one, Chief. The LB-10XAC is capable of firing cluster munitions, which increases the chances of striking critical components quite drastically. This, however, reduces the overall damage output, so think carefully on that one, boys. Now, for the game rules. Game use. The players must specify at the start of the game which LB-10X ammo is cluster-type ammunition and which is normal ammunition. Honestly, I'd write that down on a note card or something. Best way to do it depends if you're using Tabletop Simulator. Moving on. LB-10X cluster rounds can only be designated in full-ton slots. Pardon. When firing the ammunition, the player marks off the appropriate type. So, check it off or subtract it if you've got some sort of way to keep tabs on it. Tokens, anything works really. Any attack made with the cluster round receives a -1 modifier to the to-hit number at all ranges. So this is pretty handy. Resolves hits by cluster rounds like a missile hit, with the player rolling on the 10 column of the missile hit table to determine how many of the submunitions actually strike the target. Make a separate hit location roll for each of the submunitions that strike. Each successful hit does 1 point of damage to the location struck. For the table, we'll have 2 points of heat, 10 points of damage, short 1 to 6 hexes, medium is 7 to 12 hexes. Long ranges is 13 to 18 hexes. Total tonnage is 11. A critical of 6. And ammo of 10. It is a very RNG-reliant weapon. However, it certainly is an interesting weapon to try, especially with the cluster-based munitions. All in all, though, the LBX-10 is just kind of better. So I just recommend getting it if you've got the excess money. Plus, it frees up some tonnage. And the various munition types to try, or the two, I should say, the new one being the cluster munitions, just offers an interesting sort of exploration into how a shotgun works on a mech. And that itself is kind of cool. The next piece of hardware we have is a very different one from what we're used to. It's the one-shot missile pack, or OS for short. Much like in the name, it is capable of firing only a single volley of missiles, as it has no feeds to the ammo compartments, which means it's unable to restock its supply. Game use. Single-shot launchers weigh half a ton more than standard missile launchers, but the launcher incorporates a single shot or volley of missiles into that weight. The player does not need to purchase any other ammunition for the launcher. The launcher can be fired only once in a game. The one-shot missile packs will have limited usability in combat, and they're not particularly worth it too much in my opinion. But it's a very circumstantial weapon, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. So if you can find a situation in which it works, definitely go for it. But for the most part, this is kind of a not really particularly necessary weapon. You're better off getting some of the other stuff that we're going to go into here as well. Can you guess? The Paulist Laser. Such an iconic weapon. But if you have a history of epilepsy like myself, Be slightly careful with this weapon in video game adaptations. I grew out of mine, but that might trigger that. That might actually trigger a seizure. So the idea behind the pulse lasers is that it cycles high energy pulses unlike its laser cousin, which generates heat. However, the pulse differs on generating more heat and having slightly shorter ranges, making it a more brawly laser, with an overall higher damage output as a trade-off, which makes it very interesting. Makes it good for brawly mechs, definitely. For the game use, pulse lasers are used in the same manner as normal weapons, but an automatic -2 applies to the base to hit number. When playing battle troops, the small pulse laser can function as an automatic weapon. So, like little tiny machine gun, you know, like flickering lights. Bunch of people having epilepsy everywhere. Oh God, it's autistic. It's beautiful. All right. So, for the pulse laser table, we're gonna start off with the small pulse laser. The small pulse laser does 2 points of heat, 3 points of damage, has a short range of 1 hex, a medium range of 2 hexes, a long range of 3 hexes, a total of 1 tons in terms of weight, critical of 1, and obviously no ammo. The medium pulse laser does 4 points of heat, 6 points of damage, short ranges 1 to 2 hexes, medium ranges 3 to 4 hexes, long ranges 5 to 6 hexes, tonnage 2, critical 1, no ammo. The large pulse laser does 10 points of heat, so yikes, that spikes quite a bit there. 9 points of damage, short ranges of 1 to 3 hexes, medium range of 4 to 7 hexes, long ranges of 8 to 10 hexes, which is that's a little better for the trade-off, but the heat is still going to be, that's going to be an ouchie right there. That's going to be a real ouchie. A tonnage of 7, so you can see that it amps up a little bit more, so it's going to be one of those weapons where it's a hard sell, and a critical of 2. And that sort of is the pulse laser. Pulse laser is, again, you're going to want to play it like a brawly, sort of close-range weapon, and again, watch that heat management. Good use of, your firing. Don't alpha strike too much to rack up too much heat, and just be overall mindful of heat buildup. And distances. Also, we want to do your distances. And in-game and video game adaptations, keep an eye on your meters, or miles, or not done in that format, silly Kibs. But keep an eye on your distances, because you want to make sure that you don't fire it at targets that don't necessarily hit. I've seen people in video games where they'll just shoot it at whatever distance, and it'll just be like, dude, you're firing your pulse laser, and you know what's happening? Nothing. I do it occasionally too, because I accidentally misclick, because I'm bad at misclicking. Ask Bubbles or Tibbs. They have a tendency to get shot in the back in games. But the pulse laser, you don't want to waste ammo, or not waste ammo, sorry. That doesn't even make any sense. You don't want to fire it when it's not absolutely necessary, because that heat will add up, especially when you get to the medium, and especially when you get to the large pulse laser with that 10 points of heat. Ouchie. Ouch. Alright, fellas, this concludes this much bigger preview. As you can see, that has a metric buttload of more DACA and stuff. So, yeah, this is still a preview. And this is only part of it. It's a big one. It's a lot of editing and a lot of artwork. I guess it's also one thing to really quick chime in here, like, thanks for all the support, donations, etc. That is an instrumental in the art commissions for this project, because it's like, okay, we need a lot of art. So it's like, okay, focus on quantity over quality a little bit, because we just need a lot of stuff. So, either way, back to work until next time. And by the time the next video you'll see of this will be the final thing. No more previews. Big one's coming. The big one.